5r-34i is an air force with the subtype of transport, with a decent one-turn preparation time and cost of 1 jake and 1 fuel. It has 20 attack and 40 health, which is a decent for transport unit, since transport units are not meant to be heavy attackers or defenders. This card has 2 abilities. One of them is stealth, which means it can't be blocked by forces without stealth, and the second one is deploy. Soldier, find 3 soldier forces in your arsenal, show them and put them in your hand, then shuffle your arsenal. Let's go through these abilities in detail now. This combination of stealth and air allows this card to block more or less all the air units in the game, despite the earlier mentioned 1-0-X prototype, which has the camouflage and cloak mechanics which prevent a unit from blocking it as long as they persist. Besides that, however, the 5r can block all the other air units, including the pesky bombers, that tend to be a major force in the battlefield, dealing tons of damage to enemies. For example, the 3-type axe bomber, which has the bombs mechanic and thus can't damage any force units, would be something that 5r would be indefinitely able to block in battle, preventing it from doing any damage. Same goes for Eastern Night Eagle, which would be a terrifying force, since its stealth mechanics allow it to bypass normal units. But since the 5r has stealth, this is also a unit the 5r can block indefinitely. Besides negating bombers, 5r is useful as a sacrifice unit if you need to block some fatal damage. 2 examples for these kind of situations would be the E5 butterfly. In the end of the game, where you are trying to take out leader, this unit is able to take out leader with a single hit, even though it has low damage. However, as it has a stealth and it's a flying unit, 5r can block it as well, being a useful defender on a situation where you don't want to be hit. Additionally, all the units with heavy hitting power that can do serious damage, like Gemini GX, which is 100 damage, are able to be blocked by 5r, though it will be eliminated in the process. So you need to consider which units you want to block with it and which you want to save it for. The second ability is more interesting. All the deploy abilities usually have a number at the start, which is usually also mentioned in the text afterwards, which indicates how many cards you can find with this mechanic. In case of deploy soldier, you find soldier units, 3 specifically, and show them to your opponent and put them in your hand. This means you can pick any soldiers you have in your arsenal. You can take triples, you can take singles, or you don't even have to find 3 soldier forces. If you only have 1 or 2, you can only pick 1 or 2. This is how search mechanics work. I have this 5r on the field I played earlier. During my ready phase, it becomes immediately ready and the deploy activates before I enter play and production phase. I will go through my deck and find what I need for the situation. In this case, since I'm playing with Lockwood, I need some fuel resources and I need some ability to make my tanks more powerful. So I pick Nathan Smith and John Reiner Oil Engineer, so I can get 2 fuel from the John Reiners and then the help of Nathan Smith for my units in my legion. This is a simple combination that functions quite well in tabletop here, and I recommend you trying it. To fully understand the effectiveness of this, let's take a look at the soldier forces. Soldiers are generally fairly weak units, with usually having like 10 to 40 health. Even the beefiest of soldiers, like Orlov, only has 50 health. So they are fairly easy to take out, but they do have other useful mechanics. So having something that lets you find a soldier force at will, more or less, and pick what you need for the situation is very powerful, since the soldier mechanics are designed to be effective in various different scenarios. Just to get a taste out of what kind of mechanics you can have with soldier, I will point out a few of them. For example, Selfish Hero is a card that will increase your morale should you need morale, and it also lets you find other soldier forces that have already been discarded and put them in your hand, allowing you to restructure your gameplay. Abdul, for example, is a surprise soldier force that lets you draw cards, which makes it extremely useful early game if you want to get cards in your hand. Additionally, cards like Abel Jabari have special abilities that allow you to counter buildings when you play them. So having something like this in your deck when you face buildings and have mechanics to find these units, like 5r, will make your life a lot easier. So the most common use for 5r and other deployed transport is usually the 8 units that produce resources, like this Ironborg Electric Engineer. There is one of these 8 units for each of the resource types. This is a really good way to get your resource game going early on. Transport cards are generally also extremely powerful combined with ninjas. Ninjas have a mechanic called Row, which allows them to find other ninja forces in your arsenal, and they usually have other effects like in case of Jacknass, Contra. If you don't have ninjas in your hand and you complement your deck with some of the 5Rs or other transport units with deploy mechanics, you can find ninjas and just get your game going if you so choose to do. While I would love to give you some combinations for 5R, the problem is that there are simply so many soldier forces that it would take me ages to just cover all of the combinations. I would recommend, however, that if you are new to Warsaken and are just designing your deck, that you stick to simple combinations, that is triple pairs. So if you have a deck that needs fuel, for example, just take the John Rhinus in trees with 5R, or if you just need some pickup power with Rockroll just to eliminate enemy land forces, just take 3 Rockwalls and work on there. Just take what you need and just take triple copies of it and just get all of those on the field. Then once you get more used to the game, you can do combinations like just putting 1 Renzo in the hand, just to deny opponents some draws if you are playing Victor, or just doing what I like to do, which is just putting 1 Kiyoshinobu on the deck, since it has Deadman mechanic, and use it as a blocker if situation demands it, and then just add 1 other card, which I'm pretty much fond of, which is the Ichiro Daisuke the Silent, which is also a ninja and has the demo mechanic, and it's also a starting unit. So just for making a versatile deck, just having Ichiro and Kiyoshinobu on it, besides whatever you want to add later, will be a pretty interesting combination to do. You should definitely make your own combos. Also, if you are using the Great Emperor Shangli, I'd recommend that you stick to ninja units, which is specifically if you take the filter and have force and soldier selected. Take an option here to pick the ninja unit, and just go with these cards and add a couple of 5Rs into the mix, so you can easily find more ninjas faster than you would normally do. When it comes to weaknesses of 5R, the biggest problem is that it doesn't have that many weaknesses if you are facing it. It does have stealth mechanics, so it also is protected against most of the common cards that allow you to take over or destroy units. Just as the destructive hijacking, which lets you destroy an enemy unit as long as it doesn't have stealth. Or one of my all-time favorites, which is the Brainwash card, which is highly versatile, and I will go in depth to it when I reach it. All these cards usually need the target card to have less than 100 attack and no stealth. And as you know, 5R does have a stealth. So what you need to do is, you usually have to either create a situation where your opponent has to block with this card so you can get rid of it, or you just have to remove the stealth using Blinding Sandstorm or one of the buildings that removes stealth. Then you can just take it out with one of the control cards if you want to. Though this is extremely expensive way to do it, and since it's a cheap unit, you generally don't want to waste resources taking it out. However, if it's on the graveyard or discard pile, as we call it in Warsaken, or it doesn't have stealth since you already have a building on the field, and you do not have any search mechanics in your deck, but you do have some soldiers you want, you might want to consider using those control mechanics to take it on your side, because once this card enters play on your side, once you take control of it, it will immediately pay all its abilities, including deploy mechanic, allowing you to search for soldiers. Another thing you can do, if this card is already in the discard pile and you want attack, you can use Restore Vehicle to do the same, and just play it on your field and get the same benefit. There is a rather creative and situational way, however, to use 5r against its player. There is a card called Equipment Recall, which is very situational card. That costs 2 generics and says, recall, flip a specific enemy non-soldier force with a turn cost less than 2 face down and add cost timer to it. It's not ready. So what this card lets you to do is, do you notice that it doesn't require the card to have stealth or any other mechanic, just specifies target. So it can target anything except combat units. So if you go back and take a look at the 5r, or any transport card in general, it says that the deploy says that find 3 soldier forces in your arsenal. It doesn't say find up to 3 soldier forces in your arsenal, or it doesn't say find any amount of soldier forces you want to from your arsenal. It always says find 3 soldier forces in your arsenal. So if you use a card like Equipment Recall on 5r, it will go to face down on the field, and then on the opponent's turn it will flip face up again, effectively activating again, and now opponent will find another 3 soldiers in their hand. This, if you are playing decks like Warsaken, who basically uses mill, or as the mechanics go, is basically destroying opponent's arsenal and deck, you can accelerate this process, especially with ninjas. And if you want to combine it with something, there is a very useful inter card called Suppression Tactics. That if our opponent has a lot of cards in their hand, it says a specific enemy discards all but 4 cards. If your opponent suddenly has a lot of cards in their hand, that says I will just force them to draw all their soldiers. Using this will force them to have only 4 cards, which is really painful if you're running a deck that is really effective for finding cards. For example, some Intel decks can easily have over 20 cards in their hand if they're properly built and have draw mechanics, which makes them extremely vulnerable for this kind of combinations. To sum it up, 5r-34i is one of the best, if not the best, air transport units, or transport units in general. It has a stealth mechanic, allowing it to act as a panic counter against the opponent's air forces and especially bombers. It also has a decent 20 damage, which means it can do a tiny little picking on your opponent's territories, which matters. I have lost a lot of games, or won them, with just 10 health difference on territories. It also has a deploy mechanic, which allows you to reduce your own deck size and find whatever forces you want from the soldier category to complement your situation, which gets more powerful the better you are at structuring your deck. It has some limited weaknesses, so it's a very safe card to play, but on some situations, let's say Mason Mill deck, as earlier example says, that is prepared to force opponent using abilities over and over again, it might become a hindrance, but that's actually a situational combination, so you don't probably run into it. 5r-34i is also one of the cards you probably shouldn't Fireforge, as it's only against 50 health, and there are currently no air units that would be unable to destroy it by just it getting extra 10 health. So as for mechanical standpoint, unless you combine it with Nathan Smith's and increase its health even more, there is no reason for you to Fireforce this card, so you can safely just use the highest possible variety which you have for maximum experience gain. I personally think 5r is possibly the best transport unit in set 1, since not only it gives the deploy mechanics, it also has stealth and air capability, making it a valuable blocker. There is some arguments to be made for the resource costs and amount of units you produce. There are some other alternatives that are technically cheaper in this aspect, but overall utility of this unit definitely makes it stand out, and I recommend everyone to use it should they need some transport units.